Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Building Your Business right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest is Bobby Albert. A beautiful statement that he has said here. He realized at some point in his life in business, I want to be a values-driven company that achieves results, not a results-driven company that has values. There is a distinction. We're going to be talking about that today. He has a book, Growth Impact, True North Business. We're going to be talking about his book, but he's been in business for the last 40 years, around business, surviving business, thriving in business. And a number of years ago, he had one of those light bulb moments when he really, truly understood what it was all about. He was sitting in a meeting with business leaders and entrepreneurs, and they were talking about the tension always between being driven, the bottom line financial results, and the desire to create work culture where people enjoyed working and where they were able to grow to their fullest potential. And that's when it all happened, the values-driven company, not the results-driven company. And that took him a few years to figure out, as it does with everything in life. He had to look at his own values and how to create a workplace where everyone's values were aligned with themselves, each other, and overall values of the business. He impacted changes in his company, focused on more people and less profits. An amazing thing happened. The profits increased. Unexpectedly, he had business growth, success during some really tough times when others similarly were struggling. As he looked at why they were doing well and others weren't as fortunate, he realized that even though he had a great product, the difference came in that he invested in people. That is magic to my words, Bobby. Invested in people. And it's one of my mantras, right? Is that if you invest in the people, you show people dignity and respect, and you want to listen to them and allow them to participate, that is really truly where you see the abundance grow. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be on your show today.
I think it's taken a long time for people to realize, that it is about the people that you need to focus on, because when people are happy, when they feel heard, when they feel that they're really contributing, and they look at work as a kind of extended family, instead of, oh God, 8 hours in that place, now you're going to see people who have more loyalty. They feel they're more respected, there's more value, and that always creates more productivity, doesn't it? Because it creates more creativity.
Well, you're exactly right, and I appreciate you giving so much emphasis on our core values of our company. And actually, it's interesting you're talking about people. Is that's one of the things I discovered is that if I instead of focusing on results, I focus on developing the people that gave
Hmm.
me the results.
Yes, yes, yeah, that's where it's at. People want to please. People want to be a part of something. They want to be a part of growth. They want to know that they're 8 hours a day, that they walk away feeling that was a good day. I was productive. I love my coworkers. And you see such a camaraderie, a village, a community where everybody's there supportive of one another. And it can't help but expand the growth because people are in synergy with each other.
Yes, that was one thing about we had developed a culture where people thrive, and as you mentioned, the profits soared.
Hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with, for many years, our employees, I mean, for many years, they knew what our purpose, why we existed, our vision, where we were going, and what I call super objectives that some organization may be called mission is what did we want to accomplish every day. In other words, when they walked out the door, they would be asking themselves, did we accomplish this? But one thing, and you mentioned it, it took me several years to figure this out, is I kept thinking something is missing,
Mm-hmm.
something is missing. And it finally came to me. It was the core values.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I tell you what, once we introduced those core values, and you talked about our profitability, and that was in 2005. And then in 2011, when I sold my company to a publicly traded company, as you mentioned, during that time, the economic times were in the tank in late '07, '08, '09.
Yes, I remember it
Like
well.
what, like a lot of people are experiencing right now today,
Yes, yes.
with the health and economic crisis. But even at that, we grew our revenues and profits by 500%.
Wow.
And you just it's almost unheard of, but I am convinced it had a lot to do with our core values. And our value statement. It's interesting that you give so much emphasis on people. The value statement that I came up with was people, people, people.
Yes. If we treat people like robotics, that's what you're going to get. If you just, I mean, you've got the Undercover Boss, where the show where it really they go in and learn how hard people are working for that company and how unappreciated they are. When you appreciate someone, and that means, they can come in having a bad day, and they can take a moment where other people can be there to support them. They can come in wanting to celebrate, and they know they can celebrate in this family. It is a home away from home, isn't it? And so if they feel welcome, then they're going to want to be there and participate.
Yes, this actually is hard to believe, but back in the 1980s, now that was a long time
A long time
ago.
ago, that's when I
Yeah, a
first came
long
here.
time
Yeah,
ago.
41 years.
But I started realizing the importance of people.
Mm,
And I have to admit, prior to that, I was pretty hard driven for results. But I learned that it's relationships
yeah,
and results, not one or the other.
no,
Because if you go too heavy on relationships, I call them country club managers. They're going around patting people on the back, kissing babies and things, but no results gets done.
right.
So it's got to be both. But what I did way back then is we had the traditional organization chart, like with me at the top, and I had the leadership team, and you just go on down. But we had it, and we continued to have it all those years, so people understood roles and responsibility.
Right.
But one of the things that was significantly different is I took that organization chart. And by the way, with that type of organization chart, what does it tell all the employees? You come to work every day, who to serve? The
Mm,
guy at the top
mm-hmm,
or gal,
mm-hmm.
the guy or the gal at the top. But what I did, I took that organization chart and turned it upside down.
Nice.
And it's based on, Jesus talking to his disciples, and that I come to serve and not be served. And so with me at the bottom of the organization chart now, I took the responsibility to serve, equipped, and develop the leadership team. They knew it was their responsibility to serve, equip, and develop, like supervisors, all the way up to the frontline people were at the top of the organization. But even above that, those frontline people at the top of the organization, there was another box, and it had customer,
Mm,
because we all depend on the customer. If we didn't have customers, we couldn't
yes,
stay in business.
yes.
So everyone knew when they came to work every day, I'm coming here to help my teammates so that we can serve the customer.
It's compartmentalization, isn't it? Is that there's a time to get together and play, and there's a time, where you really have to everybody to the grindstone. We got a deadline. We've got to do this, and if you can compartmentalize it, as you said, not have the country club CEO, which is, pat, pat on the back and everything's playtime. Um, I used to have a restaurant, and in training the restaurant, I say, when everything's done and at the end of the evening, we'll relax. Maybe have a beer, have a pizza, this, that, or whatever, and we relax. Had a good day. This is time to celebrate. But we don't do that until we've finished serving our customers. And that take pride in serving customer. My son has a restaurant now, and he's done exceptionally well through this COVID time. I'm very, very proud of him because for him, it's serving four people: the clientele, the staff, the back end staff, and the suppliers, right? And so he's serving the whole community. And if they go away with a smiling stomach and a smiling face, he's feeling abundant. All right. So being of service is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. And it's the greatest gift you can give each other, which is not servitude, which a lot of companies, it feels like servitude. You feel like a servant. But when you encourage to be of service and give of your beautiful gift, now people really can appreciate who you are and you can appreciate who you are. And everybody wants to put the best foot forward.
Yes, and that when you say who we are, that's exactly what the core values. It
Mm,
was who we are,
yeah.
or who I was at the start, and that's one thing. The core values are given. They come from from the founder or the leader of the company, and what what's uh, if you're familiar with an author and a researcher, his name is Jim Collins, and he's known for his book called Good to Great. But in his research, and by the way, this has been I'd say about 6 years ago. I had a chance to spend a half a day with him, and at that time, he had already sold over 60 million copies
Hmm.
of that book. So, but in his research, what he found is when those companies that in his research, these were a publicly traded company from 1926 to 1991, and during that time period, he uh, he he's separated between the good companies
Hmm.
and the great companies, and of course the good companies uh, they had outperformed the average stock market by 2 times. Now you think, boy, I'd like to be invested with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Well, but when he looked at there was a small group of companies that outperformed the average stock market during that period 15 times.
Wow.
That's unheard of because you
Yes.
got to think about there was a depression,
Yeah.
there were multiple wars, multiple recessions, the economy going up and down, all kinds of, social unrest. I mean, just all kinds of things that were going on. And what he found, there were two things that he found in his research is that never changed from the day they were founded by the founders. And that was the core values and the purpose. Core values, who you are, and the purpose why you exist.
Right.
Everything else was on the table for change.
Right.
Everything.
And if you're not willing to change, then you're going to go under. But
That's
it's, there's this expectation out there where you've got to do this to survive, cutthroat, the one that grabs the throat, the one that wins. And it's like, do I buy into that? No. I may be a plodder, I may get there slower, but I'm not going to buy into that and be that competitive cutthroat nature because they're short lived. They fizzle out because they can't sustain that kind of momentum without feeding the people, so to speak, and supporting them. But a company that supports their people, and we're talking about a generation where people will go to work there at 15, 16 and get the gold watch at the end, stay with one company, be valued. Nowadays, people have to have two or three jobs, or it's very hard to get ahead. So I think you're seeing more entrepreneurs, smaller companies break off as opposed to the very big company where people get lost.
well, you're exactly right, and I have found that as well. Is the larger companies in publicly traded companies, they're so driven for results,
Hmm.
for the stock, the shareholders. And it, but it's kind of like solving symptoms rather than the root
Yes.
cause to the
Yes.
problems.
Yes.
And 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 so, but one thing else, if I may share this, is in my company we had these buttons. And one of them was called the 1, 2, 3, and what that stood for in today's terms, it's, you hear a lot about in the culture, how to build a workplace culture, is how to engage employees.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't know how to do it. I mean, it's a great term, you know, but the tendency is to make culture the goal rather than the fruit.
Hmm.
And if you can think of a fruit tree, is that, the farmer, if he has an orchard of fruit trees, he spends a great deal of time on when he before he plants a tree, that, the roots, cultivating the tree, later on pruning the tree. And, in some cases it takes 5 to 10 years to produce fruit.
Right.
So that takes a lot of faith. But what I've learned is that if you do the right things, eventually your culture will produce the fruit that you've always been looking for. But let me give you an example of what I mean by 1, 2, 3. This is going way back, but my prior way of leadership was when I was Mr. Idea Man. I was the innovator in our company. And so when I got an idea on my own, I would go and do all the research on my own. Then I would come up with all the questions on my own. I would then, come up with all the answers on my own. Then I went to our leadership team and basically was saying, look what I've done for you.
Right.
And it never did go over well.
No. Who made you the boss of me? Yes.
Yeah, well,
Where's the invitation for our innovation?
yeah. So sometimes it would take months and even in some cases, years to implement a good idea.
Yeah.
And I never could figure out what the problem was. Well, a consultant did what they called, today a 360 evaluation on me. And the results came back is that it was all confidential, is that what the leadership team and even some other people that, that filled out this 360 evaluation, is it came back is, Bobby, when you get an idea, get us involved on the front end, not on the back end after you've already made up your mind.
Right.
Well, to be honest with you, it made me mad. I mean, I thought of all the excuses like they don't understand me, they don't appreciate all that
Right.
hard work I did for them, and all they had to do is just implement and execute, And but it was a good thing I had a night to sleep on it,
Right.
because I woke up the next morning and I'm thinking, these are wonderful, good people. They have my best interests, and they gave some honest feedback, even though I didn't like it. So I changed the way I was getting people involved. This is where the 1, 2, 3 came in. And what it says is, at the beginning of the decision making process and before you make a decision, is ask yourself 3 questions. Who can help me make a better decision? Who will be impacted by it? And who's going to have to carry it out? Then you get those people involved in the decision making process.
Hmm.
That's what they call today is engaging employees, that employees love to have a boss that they can contribute toward the decisions that impact them and they're asked to be, carrying out.
Yeah.
And uh, that was so ingrained into the culture of our company, is that when I sold my company, if you walked around and just talked to our employees, they would have talk with you as though they own the company and not Bobby Albert.
Right.
And you
But
can't buy that stuff.
no, the pride, right? The pride. I kind of call it the what if syndrome. And the what if is this, what if we did this? But what if we did that? And you see people what ifing, and all of a sudden you've got something that's reached the sky. All right, this is fantastic. It'd be great to do this. Okay, now let's reverse engineer and see what's possible. Right? But if you don't allow people to dream, to what if we could do that, and allow them to really expand in the ideas, how do you know what really can be implemented? And I think that brainstorming, creative what ifs, and even the janitor or the tea lady or whatever comes up, what if we change the system and do this and do that? We could be more efficient. Listen, that's their department. They know what's needed. Invite them to the table. Let them have a say, because we never know what wonderful innovations are going to come out of that. And then you look at what's possible. How do we make it happen?
Yeah, one of the things uh, it was a lesson learned was that uh, it was pretty fascinating that a lot of these people had better ideas how to do it than I did.
Oh, God, the ego's being hit.
Yeah, yeah. So I had to set aside my pride,
Uh-huh.
and so, but boy, when I started seeing the results
Yeah.
out of, uh, it's kind of one of these things. One of the things I teach called process and content. It's a similar to relationships and results. Process is kind of the people. It's more dealing with how you say and do things.
Yeah.
The content is, you can think like a container. It's what you say and do. And uh, so when so what we're talking about here about engaging employees is really focus on the how you do things. And I learned that if I went ahead and invested on the front end of engaging employees in the decision making
Mm-hmm.
process, the implementation and the execution phase was shorter,
Mm-hmm.
and they always gave me better results than I even thought.
Well, instead of it being kind of one piston, they put all the engine together. And that's the thing, is that we can come up with a brilliant idea. It's an idea. But what about the components needed? And if everybody kind of comes up with those components from an idea, and now they kind of mechanically put it together, you've got a really good production engine going on there that will gather its own momentum and become a lot quicker because everybody's involved.
Yeah. What we're talking about is developing a team.
Hmm.
And there, I have this. I hope I can remember. It's my own quote here, but it is. Do you? It's a question. Is do you have a team of individuals or individuals on a team?
Mm, I like the reverse.
Yeah,
I like the
yeah,
individuals on a team.
yeah. Because so many organizations have wonderful, very competent individuals, but nobody's working as a team.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at a feast, you don't just want meat and potatoes. We want a buffet, and the buffet means that there's a lot of creative dishes there, and people can partake to the ones that they're inspired to do so. There's room for everybody, and even if it's a great idea that, what, that's a great idea. It doesn't fit in this one right now. We're going to shelf it and come back to it later, right? And see what we can do with it because it's a great idea. It's not dismissing people, it's inviting people. And I think that inspiration begets invitation, right? When you inspire them to step up in that individualism at the table as a team, then the invitation is for that creativity to take place.
Yeah. Well, when uh, what I learned that, there's a lot of things to this, but, especially when you're engaging employees, is that it gives you an opportunity to constantly signal to them is that I care for you. I care for you.
Yes,
I care for you.
yes.
And when you already, mentioned this, but when you start treating people with dignity and respect, and they give it back to you, you know,
Yes.
and trust is a foundation of leadership. And if you treat them like a real, I mean, like a person, and they have a sense that they belong there, boy, I tell you what, they come to work. You already touched on it. They come to work every day, excited, with a passion,
Yes.
with enthusiasm, and that's another thing. You just can't buy that stuff.
Sense of belonging.
Yeah,
Right? Because I mean, we all want to know we're counted. We all want to know, look, I've got a purpose too. My purpose is to help you with your purpose, right? But if you're ignoring my purpose, then I don't feel appreciated. So if
yeah,
everybody can step forward, in their own beautiful divine light, and you mentioned Christianity, and it really doesn't matter what faith people come from, but people who open up to a faith, open up their heart, allow that divine knowledge to come through them, lift up the spirit into action. The mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. But there is that meaningful purpose of wanting to contribute, wanting to serve, wanting to be a part of something. And I
yeah,
think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself and give your community. It in an orchestra, there's an awful lot of individuals. Each one of them is responsible for playing their instrument, but they're
yes,
in an orchestra playing in synergy and in harmony with each other. Now they
exactly.
create the symphony that is resonating out to everyone else. We've all got a part to play.
Yes. Yeah, you remind me when I mentioned earlier about the 1, 2, 3 is a button. I mean, we actually had a physical button. We had another button. It's called inside outside,
Yes.
and but the phrase that comes with that is that our service to our external customer can only be as good as our service to each other.
Amen. Yes.
And so what we did, uh, there was a time. I mean, we're talking about a long time ago. um, we had people working together, but I don't think they realized and valued that people in other functions or other departments really depended on them doing their job.
Yes.
And so, when I first introduced this, I took I made a baton, like you do
Hmm.
in a
Hmm.
relay race, but I didn't go to the store and buy one. Now you're gonna laugh when I tell you, but what it was is two uh, uh, toilet rolls. Of course, the paper, the tissue is already off of it,
Right.
uh, held together by some duct tape, and they were the ugliest. I mean, the ugliest streamers hanging out on both.
Something your
And
kid would make, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, in fact, that was probably I should have done that because they probably would have done better than I did. But is that what I did? Is that nothing happens till somebody sells something. So what I did, I would hand the baton over to the a salesperson, and we would talk about the role they played. And then I asked them, would you get up from your chair? This is a company wide meeting. Would you get up from your chair and walk across to operations and hand the baton to them? And I just kept on going, to customer service, to accounting, and then there was some other functions, beyond accounting. So uh, people really had not realized how interconnected we
Yes.
were, and we were all so dependent on each other. And that's right. And we started talking, we broke up into table groups,
Hmm.
started talking about how can we serve each other better and all those kind of, but what was it started people realizing that, okay, I'm in sales. If I happen to, in the computer system, type in the wrong street address,
Right.
and we show up at a house that's not the right house, all of a sudden, and the customer, the real customer, were late now. They're upset,
Hmm.
so how did we didn't serve that customer well?
Right.
So it really was a great illustration as to how we can. And what I did, I broke people up, and I had a Word document for them to use. And what I did, you mentioned suppliers, but we were talking. What I did, I had the internal customers to go to their internal supplier and do an interview with them.
Right. Know each other.
That's right. And
Yes.
how can I serve you better?
Right.
It's like, okay, what do you need from me? And what do you do with what I give you? And what are the gaps between what you need and what I give you? Well, some of these people got a boatload of ideas of how they could be better served, and it made us better to working together as a team.
I was a rep. I was lived in South Africa for 11 years, and I was a rep for a couple of companies. And I would go around to the suppliers, to the people selling the product. Now, I was first woman rep for mobile oil. I didn't know a thing about oil. I didn't need to. They did. It was about customer service, and it was about listening what they need, or it doesn't come on time, or this, that, etc., or whatever. And it was for me to listen to their needs and bring it back home. And unfortunately, I'd bring it back to my boss, who decided they were going to ignore me. And somehow I would end up in a meeting, in, kind of a big group meeting, and mention it. Why wasn't this brought up before? I realized I was a disruptor. Didn't go in there to disrupt, but I disrupt because for me, it's all about the people, and it's all about, are they getting the service? They know the product. Whether they want to go to the competition or not is up to them, but they will stay with people that gives them good service, that hears them. And if you're not going to pay attention to the needs of that customer, how can you serve them well? And if your ego is getting in the way, then you're not serving anybody, including yourself.
Yeah, if I may bring up another button because you got me on a roll
I'm
here.
pushing all the buttons.
Yeah, you're pushing all the buttons. We had another button that had three E's on it. We call it triple E, and we talked in terms of giving a customer a triple E experience. Now, the basis of that, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the super objectives. Well, one of the super objectives was delighting the customer, and to us, delighting the customer was more than just satisfying them. And of course, a dissatisfied customer, we looked at them in three categories: delight the customer, satisfy them, or dissatisfy. And but where the triple E is, what it stands for is giving a customer an experience that exceeds their expectations.
Perfect. Hmm.
And I mean, we have to be honest. It's hard to balance, not to promise too much that they don't, they
That
buy
you can't
from you and
deliver.
then you
Yeah.
can't you
Yeah.
can't deliver, but to promise enough that we can deliver and even do it even better.
And the
But
customer will be forgiving if something goes wrong. This
yes,
is one thing in running a restaurant. Maybe there's something wrong with the food, or it's late. This is always pops up in my shows. It's kind of a place where I'd like to be right now, on the beach. um, and, the wishful thinking here when we get traveling again. But it's like, when something goes wrong, the customer's always right, unless the customer's extremely rude, and then off they go. But the point is, it's worthwhile giving a discount, or it's worthwhile buying them a dessert, or it's worthwhile giving them a voucher for another visit, and apologizing, because then they know you're not just there to take their money and go and don't give a damn about them, that you really do value them as a customer. And they go, I know you're busy today, or I know things go wrong, don't worry, I'll be back, because you've shown them that you care. And a huge part of business success is the customer service, isn't it?
yeah, well, it is, and if I may share two stories, how it really uh, it really hit home with our employees. One at one of our company wide meetings, what I did, I gave everybody at a table because we had multiple because we had over 150 employees,
Wow,
and
that's a lot to
so
juggle.
yeah, so at a table they'd be like six people at a table, and they all got an envelope. Now I told them don't open them yet until I tell you. Well, is one in one envelope had a $10 bill, and a second envelope had a $5 bill, and everybody else got $1 bill. Now, what I did is when I at when I said now open up, the envelope. Well, guess what? The people that got a $1 bill, they were upset because they saw their friend across the table got a $10 bill, and they saw another one got five and they got one.
Mhm.
Well, I use that illustration to talk about how a dissatisfied customer feels when
Yes.
we don't deliver. And then we went into discussion groups after that, brainstorming how we can improve our service to our customer. That's one illustration. Another one, and it was still on the triple E. It was another day, another company wide meeting, because we brought that triple E back. We had so much good success with it.
Hmm.
And I gave a lot of emphasis to a slogan, careful, quick, and kind. And it ended up being the theme for the whole year. And this gets into the what and how, like we talked about a while ago. So to help our, you know, uh, the careful and quick is more dealing with the what
Hmm.
we say and do, but the kind is how
Yeah.
is it's the behavior. It's how we say and do things. And we talked a lot about those differences. And so what to really get into their head, I had each table, they were competing against the other tables, and I asked them to develop a slogan song using those words. And man, I tell you what, I was surprised. I
Yeah.
mean, the people stood up at the tables, they really got into it. They got their song down and created their own music. And then each one got in front of the whole group, each table. And there was one table that chose to sing it as a rap song. And I tell you what, it brought down the whole. I mean, I'm surprised the walls didn't fall down on us. But it was like everybody knew they won. They
Right.
won
Yeah.
because it was that good. And but you know what? For a whole year, those words, careful, quick, and kind, which kind of comes off your
Yeah.
tongue fairly easy, they never forgot
Right.
it. But the thing is, because uh, they understood the why behind all of this, and they even experienced it. It was like it was seared, in their brain.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to go back to something you said a little while ago about, handing the baton. I had a wonderful woman on beginning last year when COVID locked down, and she'd be one that would go into corporations and show how managers from different departments could interact with each other and support each other. All right. Like they're carrying the weight on their shoulders. But if they're talking to another manager, I've got this problem in my department, or I've had that problem, I did this, and form support groups. And she would show them how to structure that support group. She would check in with them to make sure they were on track. But not only was it support for each other, it was communication between departments and knowing the thread. I mean, how often do we see this in business where the departments are also separated and there's no common thread to pull them together? And then that's when you start having a dysfunctional society in the workplace, because it then becomes competitive or comparison, And we don't want that. We want that thread that holds it together, and that, personal respect and value of the people that work for you, but the purpose of why you're working together, what you're here to do. That is something that can glue everyone together, isn't it?
Yes, you help me. It's a simple little thing if you have a company wide meeting, is we when all these employees would come in, these usually started like at 7:30 in the morning, these meetings, and they'd go till noon, and then I'd have lunch catered for everybody. But the we would pre-assign people to the tables. Now they knew it in advance they were going to be pre-assigned, so they didn't know who. Because guess what? When you go to a meeting, who do you sit with? Your buddies.
Yeah, someone you know. Yes.
Yeah, and you probably work with in your
Yes.
department or something
Yes.
like that. Well, we by pre-assigning, we put people through cross-functional teams
Mm,
intentionally on in each table. So
valuable. Really
so
valuable.
yeah, so people were having to talk and
Yeah.
have brainstorming and discussion with people they've seen them like across the parking lot or something,
Right.
but they just didn't work with them. And it was amazing how some of these people became real good friends
Hmm.
in other departments and things.
and
They'd
and
go to
learn to
lunch
cross the
together.
aisle, so to speak, to communicate with each other, right, and
Yeah.
work together, which
And
is
those are
important.
just some simple things.
Yeah. I'm a True Colors coach. I don't know if you know about True Colors, the Myers and Briggs, the four key personality traits. And we are all four key traits, but there's generally one that's higher, and then the others that kind of come into different spheres, which can be affected by what's going on in your life. But that one that you really are is kind of the key who you are. And I've always found that if we can identify the person's trait by the way they see things, by their language, instead of imposing our language on them, we find a way to speak to them in the way that they hear and understand. And everybody learns, okay, you're that personality. Coming at you with logics, manuals is going to be a waste of time. I've got to speak to you in a language you know. And if we learn to respect each other's language and perception, we're going to be able to get the bigger picture and not be so narrow minded. So there's so many different techniques. There's one book that I always love, Who Moved My Cheese, by
Oh
Spencer
yeah,
Johnson.
I
Brilliant.
agree.
It-
Yeah.
Simple, but it also goes so much with the true colors because of the four key personalities are those colors, and it's and when we're aware of who we are and how we react, again, we don't take things so personally, right? We now know who really can hear you, and how you have to adjust your language with other people. And instead of like, you're different, so you're weird and I don't want to have anything to do with you, we don't see things in the same way, but I still respect your point of view. And respect is something that's so utterly important in a business, isn't it?
Yeah, one thing else, if I can come back to the core values,
Mm,
is in Jim Collins' research, one of the things that was the strength of these companies that outperformed the average stock market by 15 times is that everybody inside the company had the same core values.
hmm.
And it was he just used the term, it was like a cult inside the company. And to be honest with you, until I discovered who I was,
Hmm.
to share this with our employees, is our human resource department, HR department, somehow they knew the kind of people that Bobby Albert wanted to hire.
Yeah.
And somehow they hired people of the same core values. So when I finally introduced our core values,
Hmm.
afterwards, after these company wide meetings like that, I always walk around and it was a constant same thing said over and over. Bobby, this is who we are. This is who
Yes.
we are.
Yes. I'm proud of it.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And one of the things that uh, you can probably tell, I like to have fun. So
Which is essential in any business. It breaks the tension and it invites people to be a part of something. Yes.
exactly. Well, when I the when I introduced these core values, I just didn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't just like knowledge. I took like the first core value was to pursue personal growth.
Mm.
Well, what I did before I told them, I we played a game called Wheel of Values. It was modeled after
The fortune.
Wheel of Fortune on TV. And so what they did, they had a game board, and they were, with the trying to fill in some of the blanks of the letters, and I, they were to guess what the letters were that to fill in, and the people, the table that guessed that phrase first, they were supposed to yell the word givers. Now, I'll come back if we still have time. I'll
Mhm.
explain that. But that table, they had a chance to. I had a big old spinning wheel behind me with prizes on them. Now they weren't like a 60-inch colored television,
Shucks.
but they were pretty good. Yeah, they were pretty good. They were pretty good prizes on there.
And it didn't matter about what the prize was. It was just kind of getting the prize and standing
Yes.
up and say, I got
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Well, and after a table announced, okay, we got it, is I shared where that came from. A lot of the stories were like when I was a little boy,
Yeah.
and things like that. And then I had each table go to a flip chart. Each table had their own flip chart, and they were to discuss how we are going to live out this core value in our company.
Right.
It was amazing the ideas that came out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we played that game. There were six core values. We played it six times. And but where the word givers, if I take a moment to share where it came from, is when I came up with these core values, I got our graphics company involved to help me come up with a logo because I was going to pass out T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And they just simply asked, well, Bobby, uh, what's the key words? Because I had the core values listed. They weren't in any particular order. I just had them listed. And they said, what are the key words? So I circled, the first letter of the key words, and they said, "Look at this. This play spells the word givers." Well, that matches me as well because I love giving.
Yes, yes, yes.
So when we pass out the T-shirts, it had this, unique logo on it with the word "givers" on it. Well, they didn't know this was the day before. You talking about people in the office? They were trying to bribe somebody to tell them what it stood for. What is, hey, this Bobby, this guy that has all these ideas and things. So I tell you what, it was one day everybody showed up on time because they were really,
Inquiring minds want to know.
yeah. So that's how we introduce our core values.
Mm.
But it, again, by them engaging them to come up with ideas how we're going to live out, see, it stuck with them.
Mm.
And it's when we got through with this meeting, it was like they found themselves even.
Yes. But isn't that, this network is called self-discovery, and, everything in our journey is a self-discovery. You know, um, we must never be complacent with who we are, where there's always room for growth, always room for exploration and wonderment. And, your chapter of that particular business was over, and, you've done other things, including write. So let's talk about your book, no, True North Business, the leadership guide to extraordinary growth impact. Have you incorporated a lot of what we've spoken about today in there?
Well, in the book, in the early part of the book, I talk about the four. Well, I call it actually five essentials, and that includes the core values, purpose, vision, and super objectives or mission. But the fifth one is effective leadership, and I go into these seven life and leadership principles. But the three other additional sections in the book is one of them is it's called on and in, and what that stands for is working on your business while you work in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the next section is it's wow, just WOW. And what that stood for, this has to do when we introduced our purpose and our vision, is the first W stood for why we exist. The O didn't stand for anything, and the second W stood for where we are going. And if I may, inject something here, is that uh, we played another game. We instead of Monopoly, we call it Movopoly, and I had created these Movopoly game boards, and they had to, play the game, and of course they get won prizes and things like that, and that's part of the introduction of our purpose and vision. And the last section was the one we talked about earlier, dealing with the 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm. You know, the best teachers are those that have gone through the journey of life and been willing to learn, been willing to change, been willing to grow. Those that just become complacent and think, well, I know it all, I don't need to change. They're going to be the hem in the book and go without their G's. Life is constantly about fluidity and moving forward. And if you have a company, you want to be able to be in flow with your company and be able to adjust to the times, like this last 18 months with the pandemic. It has shown how many companies have gone under and how many have thrived and survived because they pivoted. Okay, my people can't work at work, in the company, they can work from home. How do we set that up for them? And it's like, if you show, look, I care for you, I want you to still stay employed, let's keep the company going, but we've got to come up together how we're going to do this. And there's an awful lot of thrival out there, but it really, it isn't just about survival, it is about thrival, but that comes together as a community. I'm saying that a village is only important as everybody's participation in it. And that's including the village idiot, because everybody has one. And the more we work together, the stronger that village is. And that goes for any company, doesn't it? And, whether you're a small business or a big business, these principles are the same.
Exactly. That a lot of people have they're challenged to understand that.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I call them life and leadership principles,
Hmm.
because it doesn't make any difference. And even if you're retired, the
Yes.
principles still apply.
Yes. Yes. It's what are you doing with your life now? Why did you call it True North Business?
Well, because the emphasis was on if you go, if you went out hiking or something like that, you take a compass and
Yes.
you're always
Mm.
calibrating. And of course, true north is on the compass, that tells you where you are, and you can get back home, And so uh, the, uh, the things that are taught in that book, it has a lot to do with you having the compass that you can always, there's certain things like I mentioned about these essentials,
Mhm.
these principles, the life and leadership principles, and then uh, these what I call, we mentioned, talked about earlier about these buttons.
Mhm.
They're what I call ways and means. Ways and approaches, and their practices of how to apply the principles and things. So if you can, as a business, leader, is to you if you can keep your compass pointed toward north, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Before we step into leadership of other people's lives, we've got to step into the leadership of our own. And that is, why are we doing it? What's our purpose? Uh, whom are we here to serve? And then the how will present itself. The how will come together, but you've got to ask yourself those questions first. Why must I go down this path? And when you got that statement, I just have to, then you know you're on the right road. You just have to. You don't need to explain it any further. Your entire core, your gut, your heart, your soul, your spirit is in it, and you know you have to. What's going to come out of it, whom it's going to serve, how big is it going to get, is all in part of the process and the invitation and the people coming together. But know your own leadership first, know your own purpose and meaning for doing something, whether it's a small business or a big business. If you're doing it for fame, glory, ego, and money, you will fail many times before you've learned the true lesson. But if you're doing it because you really want to make a difference in the lives of others with a simple service or simple product, whatever it is, the intent is to be of service to people and make those lives better in any which way. Now you've got the core value.
Yeah, you know, you've mentioned the word difference. Uh, uh, the values driven leadership, my company I have now, as I live what I call my second half of life,
Mm-hmm.
is is to make a difference in people, for people, and through people. And my vision is renewing minds, touching hearts, and transforming lives. And of course, my super objective uh, or mission is to delight those I serve and to increase operating profit.
And you'll do it to the day you die in some form or other,
Yeah,
right? Because when you've got that, I have to, this is my calling, this is my meaningful purpose, and whichever way I do it may change. It's a different chapter in my book, but you're compelled to do that. And the moment you lose that, you kind of lose the reason for living. So being driven by that core, that meaningful purpose to want to help other people is, I think, the divine purpose of why we're here.
exactly, exactly. Well, uh, the the about making a difference, it fits with one of my core values. I mentioned that word givers. Well, the
Mhm.
S stands for achieving significance, and I'm all about achieving. I, there's a difference between achieving success versus achieving significance.
Yes, yeah,
Significance to me is investing in other
I
people.
agree.
Success is what I can get.
And also is an illusion,
Yes,
because one person's success isn't somebody else's, right? You know,
exactly.
can you go to sleep every night knowing that, you made a difference today, how big or small?
Yes,
Can you get up every day greeting the day with gratitude and delight in what you're doing? And I think that is really, that's where the success is, right?
yes, it is. Yeah, you have to have a grateful heart
Hmm.
to be willing to give up to so you can go up.
Right. Now you
But
have another book, The Freedom Paradox.
yes,
And tell us a bit about what that one is.
well, uh, it's about the United States of America.
Hmm.
And I've a lot of these things we're talking about is I applied them to how we can reunite America.
Yes.
I I mean I go I tell you what I did. I did a lot of research on in history. I mean, it was stuff I hadn't read since I was in high school,
Had a different
and
meaning now, right?
yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I introduced lots and lots of stories about the founding fathers and things. But what I found, coming back to core values,
Mhm.
the founding core values was freedom and responsibility.
Yes.
Because we're here in America. I know you're in Canada, but here in America, everybody's worried about me and
Yes. Me,
what are
myself,
my
and I.
rights,
Mhm. Yeah.
my freedoms with, but they want those rights and freedoms without responsibility.
Or at the expense of someone else.
That's right. And so what the paradox is that as we continue to be, as we continue to live irresponsibly, the more freedoms we lose.
Mm-hmm.
However, conversely, the more we behave responsible is the more freedoms we gain.
I agree.
And, and that's the paradox.
Mm-hmm.
And, uh, and the purpose that I found was religious freedom is why this country was founded.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go in with four of the life and leadership principles. I don't call them that in the book, but I talk about these shifts that have happened, but we can reverse them. But
Yes, and we
it
have
takes,
to.
but it takes the leadership to refocus
Yeah.
on them.
You know, whether you're in a marriage or whether you're just in a business or whether it's a church, whatever it is, there has to be some structure. There has to be some rules, because that's how things move forward cohesively and productively. Everything we've talked about in this last hour can be applied to everything we do in our lives. And if we do that, ask ourselves, what is our core value? What is our core value? Now, is it costing me? And is it costing someone else for me to have that value? Now, if it's a value that you're bringing to the table now is serving other people, and we're all serving each other, now we start seeing the glue. And when you put those fingers together, tight like this, it's very hard to break. Because what's the common denominator, right?
Yes.
Love is the common denominator,
Yes.
no matter what the faith or anything, or the color or the anything else. Love is the common denominator. That's where the peace lies. That's where the cohesive lies. That's where the camaraderie and the community lies. So you first have to find it in yourself in order to bring it forth to other people. But when you do, that becomes the glue.
Yeah. Well, that's what made America so great
Yeah.
for so long. And what it was um, is that I call it the formula. It's not in the book, but it's my formula is mind times heart equal will. And what it was is, uh, uh, the mind is just gaining knowledge,
The
but
database.
yeah, but it doesn't stick with you. But when coming back to my vision state, when you touch the hearts of the
Yes.
people, all of a sudden you lift people's will up, and I saw it in our own company in our culture,
Mm-hmm.
the will of the people somehow I didn't understand it at the time, but before I sold the company, but when you tap into the will of the people, uh, that's the reason why they come to work excited with enthusiasm,
Yes.
with passion. But when people behave, take advantage of their freedom
Mm-hmm.
and not be responsible for this
Mm-hmm.
freedom, and what happens, they become more. I say, or do you want to be a picker upper or a putter downer?
Mm-hmm.
And social media has become the new trash talk
Mm-hmm.
that used to be on only on athletic fields, and it's driven, instead of love, it's driven by hate,
Yes.
and it's
And
all.
fear,
What's
right?
that?
And fear
Yeah,
begets the hate, and half the time they don't know what they're hating. They're just afraid because
yeah,
fear's been sold to them so much.
yeah, and so they think that a lot of people don't realize it. Uh, they think if I put somebody down, it picks me up. But
Mm.
see, that comes back to the me.
Yes.
I mean, if you just think about it, about the emphasis on me, we have iPhones,
Hmm.
iPads.
Yeah.
I've seen the term "iGod." We have a .com that's
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
.me. Uh, I even I do. You might have saw that I do a lot of bicycling, and it's my thinking chair.
Hmm.
And so one day I was out bicycling, And I don't know why I was thinking of the word consume, like consumerism. And,
Yes.
but the last two letters of the word consume is M-E.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we go buy, who we buy for? Typically,
Me.
yeah, for me.
Yes.
So, is, I don't know, there's something where we think that we've got to lift ourselves up so that people will recognize us when all we have to do is, to serve other people and lift them up. And it's amazing what will happen in your life if you start lifting other people up and so you can serve them more.
Exactly. That's where your abundance is. That's where your enrichment is. It gives you more than any material thing can ever give you. And, funny you mentioned social media. I actually have a show on this week too, which is about social media's safety. Um, and how it's a coward's way to be behind a screen and verbally abuse people, cyberly abuse people, and of course, many other things that are happening. Um, and I think one of the things is that we've got to all understand is our own accountability. Our own accountability, our own responsibility. You're pointing a finger, it's their fault, their fault, their fault. There's three pointing back at you. What are you being? Are you being the disruptor or are you being the solutioner? Because we know hate is not productive. We know that
Well,
hate never resolves anything. Now, if you can deal with your own discord and just like get over yourself and start seeing things in gratitude and the abundance you have. Another show I did that's coming out this week is he takes these group of kids over to Haiti to see how other people live. While you're coming back moaning about your phone and moaning about this, moaning about that, see how other people live and be grateful for what America gives to you. Be grateful for the life that you have. And then start stepping up and helping other people that aren't as fortunate as you. So I think, yeah, stop with the me, I, and myself. You're the instrument that you need to bring to the orchestra. Be responsible for that. Be responsible for your actions. Be responsible for your contribution. But the moment you are disruptive, whether it's in a company, in your own life, or in society, things start breaking down. And
well,
that's what we're seeing right now.
yeah, well, one of the culture shifts I've been observing for many years. Um, it's a life and leadership principle. It's called principle versus expediency.
Hmm.
Expediency is typically driven out of emotions and by fear. Principle is typically uh, it's uh, it's driven by faith.
Hmm.
And what I tell people is that we make choices, and our choices make us.
Yeah.
So we're making choices moment by moment. I mean, just like
Yep.
clickety click.
Even abstaining from a choice is a
Yeah.
choice.
And typically, someone that has this expedient behavior, they are more interested in self gratification,
Yeah.
short term gain. And you touched on it. If you stay on that path too long, you're gonna eventually your life's gonna have consequences,
Hmm.
and there'll be negative
Yeah.
consequences. But if you choose the path of is out of faith to be make principled decisions, and this is talking about freedom and being responsible.
Right.
Uh,
You can't have
it,
one
and
without the other.
yeah, well, the thing is, you have a behavior that you think what you're doing is an investment in the future,
Hmm.
and you're willing to sacrifice short term,
Yeah.
knowing that long term you'll have blessings and success.
Short-term gratification is going to leave you empty.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you see it a lot today is on these making expedient decision. Is that what happens? You make decision. I see a lot of publicly traded companies right now. I see them making comments, the CEOs, based on what's popular in the culture
Hmm.
rather than what really is the right decision.
The root, right? They're going from the top, fizzle
Yeah.
and stizzle, rather than the root core value. And, we've certainly seen this in the last, 15, 18 months with the whole pandemic. those companies that stood up to be there for their own people, for the people that they serve, and those that exploited it. And, the onus is back on you, mate, because we don't forget. And, we're not going to do business with people who feel like that. We rather do business with people that stepped up in whatever way and helped their community, because after all, we're all in this together. Life, we're all in this together. Everybody can have their riches, everybody can have their abundance, but what are you seeding from that beautiful abundance to help other people?
Yes. Yes. Well, you know, uh, you know, on the principal side, these people are asking, well, what are my responsibilities? But the people that behave in an expedient way, they're like I mentioned earlier, they're more worried about what are my rights.
Yes, yes. And my rights, and generally those rights are at the expense of somebody else. If
Exactly.
your gain is at the expense of somebody else, and I'm talking a painful expense of someone else, then those rights. I'm sorry, you have no right to them.
Yeah.
If it's hurting someone else, I'm sorry, you don't deserve anything, right?
Well, and of course, what happens, see, that's one of the other things about expedient behavior. You're so focused on this short-term self gratification and short-term gain, you get addicted to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's kind of like the story of the boiling frog,
mm,
you put them in cool water and then you
yes,
turn up the heat and pretty soon it's boiling and all of a sudden the frog's cooked and they never did jump out.
right.
But if you put them in hot water to
Yeah,
begin with, what did the frog do? They
yeah,
jump out.
you're right.
So that's what happens when we get addicted to this expedient emotion driven by fear. And I know you mentioned about abundance, having an abundance mindset. The opposite of it is having a scarcity mindset.
And that scarcity is running fear and running hate and running disconnect. That disconnect is not just with society, it's with yourself.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there is nobody that escapes the process of their own self-discovery, of their own self-love.
yeah. Well, what I've seen with people with a scarcity mindset, when they finally, if I can use the word, when they finally are exposed, uh, what is it? They give you all kinds of excuses, like it was my boss or
Yes,
my parents
yes.
or my wife or somebody else, and they don't look at themselves. Uh, and
And
but
things happen to you that are out of your control, right?
that's
And
right.
but how you choose to come through it, how you choose to survive it. Are you going to play the blame game, or are you going to go, okay, I didn't ask for this, it happened to me, what am I going to do with it? I'm first going to nurture myself and help myself through this process, but I'm not going to be the victim anymore, because that gives the other person the power. And being a victim is totally unproductive. Now, yeah, you've got to go through a process. And if you're not willing to go through that process, you're never going to be in your own self discovery. And however lot of time that is how much effort that goes into it. So there is no downloadable app. And that's society where have an app. I've only got 2 minutes. If you haven't got my attention, I'm gone. For my shows, unfortunately, they will never listen to them because they require them to actually listen, hear, and apply, right? There is nothing that you can do in 2 seconds that's going to be productive, right? So
Well,
if you stop
exactly.
being the short term, gratification and start looking at rooting and learning and peeling back the onions and discovering, now you're really going to get. How many years did it take you through the process of your work to go, oh, this works better. Ah, this works better. Ooh, a little epiphany here and a little epiphany there. It didn't happen all at once. It
No,
wasn't
it
one,
didn't.
great big enormous light bulb. You had little light bulbs along the way.
Yes, it was, a process and lots of aha moments,
Yeah.
lots of school of hard knocks, and
And the willingness to pivot and change.
yeah. Well, see, uh, is I have another saying is this kind of connected like sports or something, but do you play the game to win or do you play the game not to lose?
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
big difference in
Yes.
your attitude.
Yes. And if you don't win, doesn't make you a loser.
No, no,
Not
but
if you
because
played it with integrity, not if you played it with all your heart. You know, the others were better, good for them, but it doesn't make you a loser. It's like I
no,
don't believe, failure for me is giving up and never standing up again. But otherwise, I just look at every time you fall down, it's another lesson learned.
yeah, well, I've seen too many sports teams, uh, that are way ahead, in their score, whatever it is. All of a sudden, you
Yeah.
can notice they start playing not to lose. And when they do, guess what? They end up losing the game.
Well, they get cocky. Really,
Yeah.
that's it. It's get cocky and self-confident. No, we've got this and all of that. And it's like, yeah, go in like, yeah, we've got this. We're going out there. Uh, but remember, the game is about playing with people, having fun, entertaining people, inspiring people. And, if you do lose, you haven't lost. You just didn't win. Be graceful about it. And if you did win, yes, you did win. Take pride in that, but don't put the other team down because they didn't. So there's a hell of a lot of decorum that has to happen here, doesn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we
you,
have to look at all those principles, I think.
yeah. Well, you mentioned that word, integrity, and that's one of my core values is
Mine
with
too.
integrity. And this is my definition of integrity. It's a Bobby Albert definition is uh, doing the right thing regardless of the consequences. But see, what do we tend to do? When we face with a decision, we look at the potential consequences. If it's a potential consequences that are negative or we don't like, we start working backwards to make our decision. And that's not making a decision with integrity.
Right. No.
And it's not doing the right thing. So what happens? You mess up.
If my core is not in it, I can't do it. Now, my head may go, well, this is a good idea, but my core goes, no. And you go, but
Yeah.
why? I don't need to tell you. It's no. And so if my core, my heart and my core, my soul and my spirit are not in agreement, I'm not going to do it. And I don't need to justify why. But when my core is behind something and I know I can do it with that integrity, with that intention, with that love, with that direction of intent, then I know I'm on the right foot. But it takes a while in your life to get to your core. And the more work you're willing to do into igniting that core truth, that divine truth that resonates through your heart and your spirit and allows your mind to know what it needs to know when it needs to know it, that's when you're living in your truth. And you'll always be guided well by that compass.
Well, if we got time, I got a little story about the integrity. Uh, the one time in our company, our second largest customer violated their integrity with us for the third time.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to say something. I talked to our leadership about it, team about it, because there was a risk if I called out,
Yep.
uh, there's a good chance we're going to lose this customer. And so they all agreed that I need to make the call because everybody else we all have the same core values to live
Yes.
with integrity.
Right.
And it was really, disturbing within our company. So I made the call. And I tell you what, there was several people from our leadership team. They were hanging out at the door of my office, to try to hear in what was going on. But you know what? When I made that call, that customer agreed with me.
Right. They're only going to do what they can get away with, right?
Yeah,
If you call them on it,
I did. And you know what happened? See, this is doing the right thing
Yeah.
regardless of the consequences. And well, that I was shocked that they agreed with me. But the second thing even shocked me more. They came back and gave us more business.
Well, let's face it, you both needed each other, but somebody was taking advantage of the other person and pushing, we're always going to have somebody push our limits. Keep pushing. How much more can I push you? How much more can I push you? When are you going to stand and say you're not going to take this anymore? And that's kind of human nature. When you stand and say, no, not going to take it anymore. Change your ways or there's the door. And then they have to reevaluate. And it's like, I've overstepped my boundaries. Right? But we do have to show what those boundaries are, and people do have to be reminded. And if you're fearful of losing the customer, if you lose that customer, and the word gets round that you stood your ground for your people, for your integrity, it's going to invite other customers coming to you that want to do business with you because of that. So you don't lose.
No, and that comes back to behaving in a principled way
Yeah.
versus I didn't let fear drive
Hmm.
what we should be doing.
Right. Yeah. All you can do is stand tall in your own core beliefs and your own core purpose, and know that this is what you're bringing to the table. And the more we can unite people and make them that wonderful choir or that wonderful orchestra, the more music that's going to go out and invite other people. So thank you so much for sharing with us here today. How do people get hold of your books, and how did they get hold of you? What is your
Well,
site, love?
if two things is my website is pretty simple. It's Bobby Bobby Albert ALBERT.com. But if I may offer a free gift to your audience,
Yes.
this is dealing in the business area, but it's a culture assessment of your organization.
Wow.
And I say business, it could be even a nonprofit,
Hmm.
may be interested or an educational institution. But the link is bobbyalbert.com/culture culture checkup. It's one. It looks like one word, culture
Mm.
checkup. So I will make sure, Sarah, that I'll get that to you so you can put it in your show notes or
Yep,
however
I
you
got it
do
there.
that. So
Yeah. And, that's a huge gift because, we can only do with what we know. And having somebody from the outside looking in, going, okay, this is going to be a dead end, or, this apply this and it will make things better. We need to be open to that. Not like, no, no, this is my innovation, you're going to follow it. Right? This is my innovation. Help me navigate where I can incorporate everybody else so we can do it together. And we need that outside opinion. We do, because we're too busy entrenched. Yeah, and so sometimes we just don't see the solutions because we're so much in the midst of it. And somebody else's eyes looking in and seeing something just go, I hadn't seen it from that point of view. No, because you were in the center, not on the outside looking in. So that's a great gift. Thank you so much.
well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be on your show.
Are the books on Amazon?
Yes, ma'am. All three of them are.
Oh,
So,
we had another book. I didn't even catch that. What's the other one?
well, it's called Principal Profits.
Okay. Quick blurb about the principal profits before we go.
Well, it gets into talk about core values. It gets in to talk about 15 attributes of culture. And I give a lots and lots of practical examples that we used in our own company. And uh, so that's basically what the book gets into some of these the difference between leading and managing
Mm,
and relationships and results and uh, principle versus expediency and process and content. So and abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. So there's a lot in the book, but uh, if I could suggest, the True North Business book will cover some of those things in a more like a cliff note type of
Mm.
version. They'll also in the book, there's links to downloadable documents to
Hmm.
help you discover your core values, your purpose, your vision, and some other tools that are in there as well. So,
You know, I always say the best teachers are those that have gone through the process. And for a young person starting out today, they can have all the enthusiasm, they can have a great product. But if they listen to those that have gone down the path beforehand and have these wonderful skills, tools, and advice and principles, it just like, why go through the roller coaster? When you can apply this now, you know, I say, you're like, you're going to fall in the potholes, but we don't want you falling in the Grand Canyon, you know? So it's like, pay attention to the wisdom that's been accumulated over so many years in running a business, because these are golden nuggets for you. You know, I call my overall shows the Orchard of Wisdom podcast, ready for clicking, because every nugget from every tree is something that you can apply to your life that's going to make your life and your purpose better. So be willing to listen, to learn, to read, and to apply, because that's what's going to make you succeed in your meaningful purpose. Thank you so much, Albert, for sharing here today. It's been wonderful talking to you.
thank you.
Until next time, folks, remember those that have gone before us are nuggets of wisdom. Open up to listening and learning. And really, when you want to do something, is it coming from your core, your meaningful purpose? Is it you just have to? Because when you do, and you invite everyone else to join you on that journey, that's when success will knock on your door. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.